All right, and we are back here on the GSMC football podcast. And for the second or third part of the show, we will discuss the New York quarterback situations with both the Jets and the Giants. Obviously, I already touched upon the Giants quarterback situation. For me, unfortunately, Daniel Jones, in my opinion, played his last snap as a Giant on Sunday when he suffered the injury. And the Giants are going to be picking in the top 5 once again. It just seems like they can't seem to get out of their own way. Listen, last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, yeah, Joe Judge had his introductory press conference. And Giant fans bought in. And, they were somewhat competitive in 2020. Then the following year, they regressed. Last year, Brian Daboll goes for that 2-point conversion. And on the first game of the season, they get it. They win the game. And everyone's like, oh, we love Daboll. They make the playoffs. We love Daboll, right? This year, not so much. And it's just been a disaster. Once again, another disaster of a season for the Giants. And now they're going to be in the market. They're going to be looking for a new quarterback. And they're going to be drafting one, you would think. I hope they get the next elite quarterback from this draft. Because the Giants, the Daniel Jones pick really set them back. In some ways, because for me and for a lot of people, he's okay. He was okay. Now, we just never. Now, he wasn't coached right. This was not the right system to be put in for him. The right team, because you went from Pat Shurmur to Joe Judge, now to Daboll. You had all these different systems you had to learn, and the offensive line has been terrible. They still can't get it right. They still can't get it right. No matter they can't do it. And it amazes me how it's taken this long, and they still haven't fixed it yet. Still haven't fixed it. And going into this season, people expected the Giants to be more competitive with their team being better. And I thought they would be competitive, but I didn't think they would make the playoffs. I really wasn't on board with that, just because the schedule was tougher, and I didn't really see that happening. But I thought, you know what, maybe they'll be more. They're going to be better, but they're probably going to have a worse record than they did last year. And after the first game of the season, I was like, this season's over. They're not going to be good. And I was right. Now, I didn't expect, I shouldn't say I didn't expect, but I was hoping Daniel Jones wouldn't get hurt, so you can get a fair assessment of what, he is what he can be. And we never really got that, because then he had the neck injury, and he tears his ACL on Sunday. He played his last game as a Giant, in my opinion. Now, does that mean he can't go elsewhere and get another shot? I think he can, but it's not going to be here. And it looks like, we got Tommy DeVito. It looks like he's going to be starting on Sunday against the Cowboys in Dallas. And if you look at what Dallas does to teams at home and what they did to the Giants earlier in the year. Now, again, I was fortunate because I was at a wedding. I didn't watch a single second of that game until I watched the highlights. They'll be lucky if they score 10 points. Now, they got shut out against Dallas the last time. It can happen. It definitely can happen again. And that was with Daniel Jones. That was with Saquon Barkley. That was with Darren Waller. Two of those three guys are not playing in this game. Darren Waller, I'm pretty sure, was placed on IR, which, it was expected. At some point, he was going to get hurt. They got no wide receivers. They can't. Well, I mean, they can't get the ball to Jalen Hyatt, who they drafted. It's a mess. It's a mess with the Giants, and you got Tommy DeVito starting. I really don't think they're going to win another game. I really don't. So at this point, for me, I'm hoping they get a top pick in the draft. They take the best quarterback available. But the problem is, you got to fix this offensive line. So it's frustrating. And then go on the other side. You look at the Jets. I said that they could be a team that can make the playoffs because of their defense. You run the ball effectively with Breece Hall. Zach Wilson plays mistake-free football. But what happened on Sunday? I mean, Zach Wilson held on to the ball way too long. He was taking sacks. He fumbled it at midfield. You got to bench him. I really think you got to bench him. And the funny thing is when you had Robert Saleh go on the Michael Kay show, and they asked him, why don't you give one of these other QBs a chance? Tim Boyle, Trevor Siemian. And he says, I plead the fifth. You are the head coach of this football team. Make the decision. You make the decision. Now, there's people saying, are there other people behind the scenes that are influencing this? I forgot to say that. That's possible. Because, listen, there's one scenario I could think of. They don't want to sit Zach because you know who likes Zach Wilson? Aaron Rodgers. And if you bench Zach Wilson, is that going to upset Aaron Rodgers? That's one thing I could think of. And that's the last thing the Jets want to do is upset Aaron Rodgers because they brought him here to win football games for him and for them. And right now he can't do that because he's hurt. And he's gonna come back next year. But Zach Wilson is a guy that has no confidence. He has no confidence at all. And that's bad. Because he's holding on to the ball too long because he doesn't want to throw a pick. And I went back and I watched the highlights from the Tennessee Titans game a couple of years ago when he threw. And some of the throws that he made in that game were amazing. The one to Corey Davis for the touchdown, and then I think it was Keelan Cole, the one that he threw down the sideline to him. Where is that Zach Wilson? Now again, that Zach Wilson was a rookie, and Jets didn't do that good that year, but still where is Zach Wilson? That Zach Wilson that takes shots down the field. He doesn't do that. Now, you could look at the offensive line and say he doesn't have enough time. And again, there was that play where he could have took off with the ball and got a first down, but he shoveled past it to Michael Carter, who gets tackled immediately. At this point, you're 4-4. You got a defense that has been great this year. You're wasting it. Now, listen, I've seen Tim Boyle, I think the last time he started a game was when he was with the Lions a couple years ago. I think that was the last game. At least that was one game I remember he started. And the Lions lost the game I think it was 13-7 or something against the Browns. It was a really low scoring game. Tim Boyle's not the answer. Trevor Siemian, we've seen Trevor Siemian. He was the starter with Denver. He was with the Saints, I know that. He's bounced around a little bit since the Broncos. Because he was Peyton Manning's replacement back in 2016. And the Broncos, his first year as the Broncos starter, they weren't that bad. He got hurt, though, of course. They ended up missing the playoffs. I think they went 9-7. But, it wasn't that bad with the Broncos, but he's not the answer either. But that was so many years ago. Now, you bring him in. Sorry, holding back another sneeze. There's always at least there's always at least one time during the show where that's gonna happen. You bring him in. He's on the practice squad. What they should have did? Why didn't they go out and trade for somebody. They could have traded for Josh Dobbs. Why didn't they do that? Josh Dobbs, it was for a late round pick. You could have did that. You could have, you could have signed Carson Wentz. You could have did something. Maybe trade for, Marcus Mariota's a backup in Philly. Maybe you could have traded for him or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing names out there. But Carson Wentz was a guy that was sitting there. Why didn't they go and sign him? The Rams go and sign him. I feel like I've been talking about Carson Wentz a lot, but I said he's the best quarterback available that's a free agent. Why can't you go do that? But again, this all could go back to, well, they don't want to upset Aaron Rodgers. So they kind of got their hands tied right now. I don't know. I have no idea. But for me, you got to bench Zach this weekend. Because now you're playing the Raiders, who are riding high after their win over the Giants, and now they're going up against a team that is also inept on offense. Look, all they got to do is score 17 points. Are the Jets going to be able to do that? Can they do that? The only way they could do that is if they force turnovers. I mean, they're talking about how, a couple times the Chargers put the ball on the ground, and the Jets, rather than just diving on it and getting the ball back, they were trying to scoop it up and run it because they're like, we gotta score points ourselves because our offense can't do anything. I mean, I knew when the Chargers ran back that punt return, I was like, the Jets are not winning this game. This game's over. 14-0 or 10-0, 17-0, whatever. At that point, you're like, yeah, this game's over. They got no chance because they can't come back from this. And any time that they had something going, a penalty. They get their first roughing the passer call in 2 years. And guess what happens on the very next play? Garrett Wilson fumbles the ball. And I think that's what led to the second touchdown. Because I think they were able to stop the Chargers on the Zach Wilson fumble. But it's comical. They got to bench Zach this weekend. They have to. But are they going to do that? No. And right now, the head coach on the Jets, and even the head coach with the Giants too, I mean, not looking good for both of them. Now, I think they both are going to come back for another year. But to me, Brian Daboll's back to square one with me. And Robert Saleh, I just don't think is a good head coach. I don't. I think he's a very good defensive coordinator. But as a head coach, because you got the defense playing great, but I think as a head coach, I don't see it. And I like Robert Saleh too. I do like Robert Saleh. I just don't think he's a good head coach. I don't think he's a good head coach, and I don't think right now Brian Daboll looks like a good head coach either. Even though I was like, oh, Daboll's great. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened to Brian Daboll, but yeah, quarterback situation not looking good. Giants don't have a quarterback. Jets, I mean, they don't have one either. And, Aaron Rodgers, I mean, who knows? I would love to see him come back, but he's not walking through that door anytime soon. I think the next time you see Aaron Rodgers is on the field next year. I don't think it's going to happen this year. I don't. But we'll see. So with that, we are going to take our final break of the show, and then when we come back, we are going to preview tonight's game, exciting game between the Panthers and the Bears. So stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.